WLIB 1190 AM in New York are watching live Impact Television. We are here all day for the last day session of National Action Network, and it has been a huge success. Let us hear now from our National Civil Rights Organization partners. Let us start with the President, CEO for the last decade and more of the National Urban League, former Mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana, Marc Morial.
Good morning, man. It is an honor to be here, to be back at the National Action Network with my friend and brother, Reverend Al Sharpton. Reverend Sharpton has been, and I've shared with you before, embraced me when I came to New York almost 15 years ago to take over the presidency of the National Urban League. And we've had a chance to walk side by side to cover, as he says it, the streets and the suites, to work together in this ever important fight for civil rights and economic empowerment. So I'm proud once again to say thank you, Reverend, and you have had a great week here at NAN. And I'll talk about that in a minute. To Van Jones, we were proud to stand together on the First Step Act. And Van, I told lots of our friends that as we moved a little bit ahead, we were playing political chess. We couldn't play checkers. We needed to make some moves because we had been there with President Obama, all trying to get a criminal justice reform bill through the Congress, and we came right up to the 2-yard line and couldn't punch it through. So in this instance, what we did was put the people who are behind bars and their families first and set aside political considerations in order to pass the First Step Act. And it is the first step, and now we must work on the Next Step Act. Thank you, Van Jones. To my sisters, Kristen Clark, Vanita Gupta, and Janice Mathis, give them a big round of applause. When I became president of the National Urban League, the leadership of historic civil rights organizations were dominated by men. Now we are dominated by sisters. And these sisters are smart and tough and no nonsense, and I get a joy to see them in action. See them in action in public, and as we do, see them in action in private, doing the very, very important work in private meetings and consultations and in conference rooms where there's a lot of hand-to-hand combat going on about policy and legislation and activism. So I want to salute them this morning, give them a warm round of applause, thank them. And in celebrating them, as Reverend said, before I had the great privilege to serve as president of the National Urban League, I was 8 years as mayor of New Orleans, and also served 1 year as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and told a reporter who interviewed me just 2 days ago on Lori Lightfoot's historic win in Chicago that now I have a hard time finding a brother mayor of a major American city, because you have sisters who are mayors in San Francisco and New Orleans and Atlanta and Charlotte, in Washington, in Baltimore, in Chicago, and Gary. And it is a great point of pride because I have 2 smart daughters. And in seeing them, I see role models for my daughters. So thank you so very much. And also, I do want to also acknowledge the presence of Jesse Jackson Jr. Jesse Jackson Jr. always provided insight and a helping hand during his years in Congress to help the work of the National Urban League. And I often visited many members of Congress, got lots of commitments and lots of promises. You sort of bank these promises, but then you focus on those who follow through on their word. Jesse Jackson Jr. always followed through on his word. And thank you, brother. It's good to see you today. And also to Gwen Carr, it's good to see you. Ms. Carr, where's Gwen Carr? I know she's here. I love to see your spirit, and we continue to stand with you in your continual fight for justice. Let me cover a couple of quick things this morning. First, this is about measuring the movement. Several years ago, a little bit less than a decade ago, we were challenged to come to NAN and talk about what we did in the last year that could be measured. The National Urban League has a network of 90 affiliates across the nation. We are unique in the civil rights movement in that we are a provider of direct services to people. I'm proud that in the last year we provided services to 1.7 million people in 90 communities across the nation. What did that include? 150,000 people either came to get financial education services because they wanted to become homeowners, came to us for job training because they wanted a better job in this economy, or came to us to be placed in a job. And that included thousands who were formerly incarcerated, who upon release needed help to get back on their feet so that they could be participants in the economies and the communities together, 150,000. And nearly 500,000 young people, teenagers, middle schoolers, early childhood participants participating in our after-school and education programs across the nation. 10,000 small businesses were provided free consulting services through our network of almost a dozen entrepreneurship centers, including assisting 1,600 people in creating a brand new business in our community. I share that with you because this work isn't going to be on the front page of anybody's newspaper. This work, which is the work I say in the hot kitchen of civil rights, behind the scenes, where we're working with families and people one-on-one to help them escape poverty, to find financial independence and self-sustainability and economic self-sufficiency. But I want you to know that work. I want you to understand that civil rights in the 21st century is broad. It's activism. It's public policy. It is work in the area of corporate diversity. It includes the effort to help people who are elected to advance public policies that are responsive to our community. It is broad in America, and the 21st civil rights movement, 21st century civil rights movement is alive, and it is well, and it is strong, and we're up against some powerful forces. Two other things. We'll release in less than a month our State of Black America report. This year, its focus is on the black vote and on political participation. Something important has happened here at the National Action Network Convention. The message that this convention sends, with all of these candidates coming here and embracing things like reparations and talking about healthcare and using terminology about equity, is that finally we may be at the beginning where the black community is neither going to be ignored nor taken for granted. Neither ignored or taken for granted. But coming to NAN for those candidates cannot be a check the box, if you will, exercise. It has to be the beginning of engaging with us on an ongoing basis. Let me tell you about the power you have. 25%, 6 or 7% of all Democratic primary voters in 2016 were African American. It's the largest block, if you will, the largest contained community in those that will cast ballots in the Democratic primaries. I said to the press, anybody who understood those numbers, who is running for office and ignores the black community, should get a PhD in being a fool. Because numbers do count. But let me tell you what we face. We face a vicious, diabolical, all-out assault on our right to vote. And it is a three-legged stool. On one hand, there's the United States Supreme Court. And that court, in the last decade or so, has handed down at least 3 decisions which are designed to undercut the growing influence and power of communities of color. The so-called Citizens United case, which has allowed wealthy Americans to flood the political process with unlimited sums of money, is one. The Shelby v. Holder decision of the March on Washington struck down a key provision of the Voting Rights Act. Was an absolute insult to the work of those who fought for the Voting Rights Act in the 1960s and the success of the Voting Rights Act in protecting the right to vote and pushing back against vote dilution was the second decision. And the third was a decision most recently which reaffirmed the ability of states to purge voters as they did in Ohio when they simply had not voted in the last 2 years. So the Supreme Court is one leg of the stool. The second leg of the stool are state legislatures across the nation, 40 strong, who have introduced various pieces of legislation to make it more difficult for people to vote. Canceling early voting on Sundays. Coming up with phony voter ID requirements. Making it more difficult for community-based organizations to register people to vote. Consolidating polling places. Well, I heard Stacey Abrams at this podium talk about how election officials in Florida used every scheme and every scam to try to rip that election away from her. State legislatures are the second leg of the stool. The third leg of the stool is many, many, many thousands of miles away. That's the leg of Russian interference. Now, hear me. The Senate Intelligence Committee, organizations like the German Marshall Fund, and we will talk about this and release this information in our report, uncovered that the driving, strategic, animating, energizing intent of Russian interference was to exploit racial divisions in the United States and suppress the African American vote. So what did it include? It included the creation of fake identities. Fake identities who posed online as civil rights activists, as Black Lives Matter activists. There were photos of them and profiles of them. And they polluted, they took the legitimate good name of Black Lives Matter and began filtering the internet through Instagram and other devices with messages saying, do not vote. With messages saying, don't vote for this one. With messages which said, leaders are sellouts. Their activity was greater than any legitimate activity using the Black Lives Matter hashtag. This is what happened. This is what we're up against. We're up against a diabolical, sophisticated, carefully orchestrated effort to suppress our votes. First of all, we must be aware of it. Second of all, we must call the question on elected officials, those who run, those who administer elections processes, those in law enforcement, that we will not tolerate it. We cannot allow, on our watch, in the 21st century, a repeat of what happened in the 1880s and the 1890s, when our people, after making progress during Reconstruction, saw it completely snatched away with the rise of segregation, Jim Crow, and Plessy versus Ferguson. So this right to vote, this protection of democracy, we must recognize it is under assault in America today, and we have to fight back against it. I'm going to talk about one last issue, and that is the upcoming census, the 2020 census, which is a year out. This year's census is going to provide to each of us with 4 options to participate. There'll be an online option. There'll be an option via telephone. There'll be the traditional paper form option. And then there will be what's called the enumerator option. That's where someone knocks on your door. In 2010, we had a fairly successful census. President Obama took office in 2009. He increased funding for the census. I had the privilege to be selected as chair of the Census Advisory Committee. We, if you will, re-energized the advertising in Black and brown communities and put more money behind it. Notwithstanding that, we still had an undercount of Black people. And we had an undercount of brown people. And one of the biggest components of the undercount, hear me, was the undercount of children. The undercount of children. I feel we can do something about that. Why is that the case? People filling out a form or talking to the enumerator and not identifying the fact that they have children in the home, or not identifying that a child may be away at college but still living here in the home. We have got to focus on this, but we've also got to demand that the Census Bureau include this in its public education campaign to remind people. Secondly, in our community, we have a lot of multiple families living under one roof. So if you get a census form and your mother lives with you, your sister lives with you, you have to place them on the form. They're not going to get a second form. So we've got to educate ourselves so that we can do everything that we can do to ensure a complete and full count, while at the same time keeping pressure on census. I'm concerned about this census. The last census was conducted when Barack Obama was president. The previous census was conducted when Bill Clinton was president. The 1990 census, which was a census with a large undercount, was conducted when the first Bush was president. Already, the Census Bureau has won sought to add a citizenship question at the last minute without even following their own procedures when their own research says it's going to discourage people from voting. Get that question off the census form. We want the courts to do it. Number two, the Census Bureau has cut in half the number of local census offices that they're going to stand up in the 2020 census. Those local census offices are places where you can go to pick up a form, drop off a form, get assistance, and out of which these enumerators will indeed work. Number three, we have great concerns about whether the advertising campaign, which is the largest advertising campaign that will be conducted in the United States, is going to focus on hard-to-count populations and on our community. So we have work to do. So in closing, and in sum, we have to focus on today and tomorrow. We know that we are up against some sinister forces, some difficult times, and some diabolical forces. But we have to be empowered. We can't become caught watching Twitter, watching TV, cursing the TV screen, spending the whole day so mad. We got to channel that energy into participating, into voting, into participating in the census. So we're going to work together with NAN, all of the other civil rights organizations. Our goal as a community is that we want the highest voter turnout in the primaries and in the general election in American history. We got to set a goal for ourselves. Our power comes from the ballot. To those who said, and I heard them way back in 2000, they said it didn't matter who won. In 2016, some said, well, it really doesn't matter who won. Don't waste your time voting. Our power cannot be surrendered by disuse. We have to fight voter suppression, and we have to battle voter self-suppression so that we participate. So thank you, National Action Network. God bless you, and I'll see you again.
Let me say, and I'm going to bring Vanita Gupta up next, and I want our live audience to hear all of our leaders. And I want to say a couple of things of what Mark has said, because it's so important as we work together. Yesterday we were electrified by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. And I was saying to her, the census is this important. They have already said New York State, for example, may lose a congressional seat. If we are undercut, you know where they'll take that seat from. So this is as serious as it gets. So as we work with Urban League and others on the count, everybody talking about what are we going to do? One is we've got to do the count. Van Jones talks about how we're the lineage of Dr. King, Reverend Jackson, and all. One of the things that Dr. King did is he went north to Chicago, where Reverend Jackson was born in Greenville, picked up the ball, and expanded in the north, and part of what he expanded was Brooklyn. I was born in that chapter. I was one of the first ones born in the north. I never sat in the back of the bus. I don't know nothing about no white water fountain, none of that. My mother did. I know New York bigots. We were not told was sitting in the back of the bus. We were not told you couldn't go to the water fountain. But we knew the neighborhoods we couldn't go in. And we knew the schools we couldn't attend. Ocean Hill and all. That's what I grew up in. Now, going right to Van's point, the prototype of that was not Bull County in the South. It was guys like Trump in the North. Don't forget, Trump grew up about a mile and a half from Howard Beach. And the only New York racial issue in 30 years he ever took a position on was he called for the execution of the Central Park Five. So I know the pinstripe manicured northern guy. And that's what we've got to fight with on this census stuff. Now, we need the guys like Van to deal with them. You know, like good cop, bad cop. And I told this, and I'm going to Benita. We've got to be smart enough where they say, now you know shopping's crazy, but you'd rather deal with me. And I'll be crazy for it. As long as we don't get folk out of jail, I have a problem with that. And that's what they do every day. I remember that we was having some kind of demonstration, Chris, and I think it was a day of outrage. And we were out there getting ready to go to jail. We decided on civil disobedience, and we gonna fill the jails, close down the city. And I made a speech. I jumped on the back of a car, made a speech to get everybody inspired to go to jail with me. We went to jail, brought us down to 100 Center Street, and put us in the bullpen waiting to go see the judge. And I looked across the bullpen. We had a young guy that it wasn't Attorney Hardy, somebody that worked with us was our attorney. He was in the bullpen. I said, what you doing in here? He said, I got so caught up in your speech, I just had to go. I said, well, who gonna get us out of here? Everybody got a lane to play. Stay in your lane. And that's what Mark and I have done. We're working on tech centers together, National Urban League, National Action Network. We already have a 30,000 square foot tech center in Newark under National Action Network. They don't put that in the paper. You not see one article. I bring for 2 years, 30,000 square feet every day training young people. National Action Network, open night and day, Reverend Stephanie Bartlett. Have a lab in Hollywood. We can really expand that and do some. One in City Urban League, one City NAM. Because we are with this digital divide. Our community is not brought up to par. We used to have library by bus, we have tech by bus. We have NAN tech buses that we bring right in the hood. If our children are not literate with technology, they cannot survive in this new economy. That is mandatory. So we've got to be able to do social service and social justice at the same time. Another partner on measuring the movement, what they're doing, and I want you to take all these in our action sessions as we start, because people talk about their organizations ain't doing nothing. Well, Mark told you specifically what the Urban League is doing. And I want y'all to go back to your cities. Urban League's doing this, NAN's doing this. You know about the tech center, you know about what we're doing census. We gotta go back with action spots. Because usually the folks telling you they ain't nobody doing nothing is because they're not involved in anything, so they wouldn't know anyway. You call my radio show, ain't nobody doing nothing. What are you a member of? Nothing. Well, then how do you know? President and CEO of the Lawyers Committee. I'm going to go to Lawyers Committee next week. Let's go to Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Your sister has worked in the Justice Department, and I can tell you she's worked diligently on many of the concerns and cases that we have been concerned about. Because there's pressing room, I won't go into details, but I will say she never violated the trust of the Justice Department. There ain't no bar in her. I said that she didn't. But she has always let us know she's going to stand up for what is right. And when she took Wade Henderson's seat. She has been just as committed, just as passionate. Let us hear from Vanita Gupta.
Good morning. Good morning. I am so honored, and I think we should give Reverend Sharpton another round of applause.